Welcome to Turn Talks, the podcast that bridges the gaps between college and career. Join your host, Tina Fox, founder of Turn Mentoring, as she brings together corporate leaders, educators, and university alumni to share practical wisdom and equip you with confidence, clarity, and connection.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rick Bernstein. I am a podcast producer. I am the founder of Voice of DC Productions, which is basically a production company. We love to tell stories. And so many of the stories that I gained and formative in my life started right here in this campus 30 years ago. I can't believe I'm saying that. Tina,
Happy homecoming.
How has it been 30 years that have passed since this has happened? But I grew up in Fredericksburg, Virginia. My brother came to JMU. That was a huge inspiration for me, coming to visit him and falling in love with this campus. So Tina, I wanted to ask you, and again, welcome to the Pod of DC. This is a Turn Live event, so we're featuring the mentorship program and leaving a legacy through mentorship through Tina's programs. But I wanted to learn a little bit about when you came to JMU, how you really connected with everybody on campus. It was probably about 10, 11,000 students at that point.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Tina Fox, 1994 alumni at JMU. I actually started in the College of Business. I didn't end in the College of Business. I ended in the College of Arts and Letters. My homecoming, this is my 31st homecoming. So it's been a long time. The campus has changed a lot. When I first came here, I just thought it was Disney World. I mean, it was away from my parents. I get to establish my independence. I get to study something that I'm interested in. I get to make new friends and connections. And it was just an amazing time to be here on campus. And ever since I've come back as an alum, I see that the culture hasn't changed, that we're still opening doors as Dukes for one another, which is super cool. And I asked Rick to join me here this week because we are two alumni who really enjoy giving back. I know Rick gives back through philanthropy and some of his businesses. I give back through the build out of Turn Mentoring. But we're here to connect with you all and talk a little bit about interpersonal skills, about human connection, because that's what Rick and I are all about. We sort of centered our whole career path around human connection. And being that this is COB 202, interpersonal skills, we hope that what we say today is going to be relevant to all of you.
Yeah, when I came to campus, my eyes were wide open. I knew I loved JMU just from visiting my brother here. But in high school, I was really active in youth group kinds of things that went outside of Fredericksburg. So into DC and Delaware and North Carolina. And I started meeting people through youth group functions outside of just high school and my friends. So when it came time to go to college, what was really cool, and there were probably about a dozen kids from my high school who were also enrolling at JMU. I chose not to room with any friends. I chose to really meet some new people when I started. And so when I got to campus, I would meet people from Northern Virginia or Southern Virginia or another state. And I somehow picked up on knowing someone that they knew. And so I was hypercharged when I came on campus, leveraging the connections and relationships from my youth group experiences and the people that I met when I came to immediately make connections, not only in my dorm, but throughout the campus. And once I got kind of my feet wet, and again, having an older brother who did activities like student ambassadors, orientation assistant, fraternity life, I mimicked exactly what he did. So spring year of my freshman year, I became a student ambassador and giving tours. That summer, I was an orientation assistant, and then I rushed a fraternity my sophomore year. And so what I found with those experiences is that without really knowing it at the time, my network began growing and growing and growing. And it was something that was really life-changing for me because getting to this point as an entrepreneur, you have to have some salesmanship. And the very first job I had in sales was selling this university as an orientation assistant as well as a student ambassador. So I was going to say, what kind of activities, Tina, when you came to campus, were you really drawn to that you feel like hypercharged, accelerated your networking?
Yeah, I was an epic fail freshman year. Let's just face it. I mean, I came to campus. I was so excited to be away from home. And it was like, let's just go, right? And I wanted to go out and I wanted to party with everybody. I also happened to have a boyfriend on campus. So that made it very convenient for us to hang out, right? So we're kind of acting like adults. It was a ton of fun. But then my grades started slipping. And that wasn't who I was in high school. And I was having a little too much fun. Game the freshman 15, you name it. I mean, it was just a disaster of a year. But I got myself together in spring semester, primarily because my parents said, if you don't get yourself together, we're not paying for this anymore. So that's a huge motivating factor. But then sophomore year, I decided I needed to find my people. And I didn't know how to find my people on a campus of, at the time, just over 12,000. And now we've doubled, right? We're over 25,000 on this campus. So finding your people, even though you're surrounded by people, can be hard, right? You're kind of shy to, are they the same class as me? Are they upperclassmen? Are they in my major? And so I decided to rush that year. And that changed my life. And even if I didn't get selected for a sorority, I figured at a minimum, I was going to meet a lot of people. So like you, I decided to rush. I found my home at Sigma Kappa. Some of those sisters are still the best of my friends. We hold a annual 4-day girls trip every year. We hold that time sacred. And like I said, this is our 31st year out of school. So I've known some of these women for 35 years. And we still stay connected to this day. So that was one of the areas. And then I didn't go as wide as you with all the different activities you had. I only had so much bandwidth for myself. But I also ended up joining University Program Board, which was amazing because it taught me something different. It wasn't just about the friendships that I was making in my sororities. It was more about me trying to connect with people on a project. So it was almost like project-based friendship, where University Program Board back in the day was in charge of bringing different acts to campus. And I remember two of my most favorite acts, and they couldn't be more opposite of each other. One was James Brown. We had him as a singer here. Nice. And then the other one was the late great Dr. Maya Angelou. We had her come in and do her poetry reading, and it was absolutely amazing. And so getting a chance to connect with friends through projects was another way that I was helping myself understand what the real world would look like, right? You go to work, you're probably going to develop some friendships, but at the same time, it's going to be centered around a program or project.
Yeah, I kind of, look at the friendships that I've kept over time and the relationships that have been personal and professional. If I can say 30 years later, I'm in a fantasy football league with these people, 3 different leagues in all different aspects of my life. One with a Vienna Dads group, where I'm a dad and I live in Vienna, Virginia. One league with them, one league with the fraternity guys, and one with the guys I met freshman year. And so, when I was coming in as a freshman, it was these relationships, these friendships where everything is brand new. And so you're really bonding together. You guys find that when you were kind of thrown into this place called campus and JMU, you're developing these bonding relationships, whether it's in your suite or who you room with or who you share a hall with. And so what I found 30 years later is that those friends who I met that very first year were the ones who I still have stuck together with. We do an annual golf trip every year, and we've really stayed close, really personally. We've all been groomsmen in each other's weddings. We have been there for graduations for their kids now, which I can't believe we're at that point. And so that was kind of my first year in a nutshell. Second year, I go and I decide to rush a fraternity my sophomore spring semester. And so it was, again, my brother had done it, so of course I'm going to try it. And from there, that's where my network professionally, believe it or not, started to accelerate. I was undeclared, but I became a business major kind of from sophomore year into junior year. And the way that I even got into the workforce was your junior year is typically when there is a campus recruitment events, and they might do it throughout your time here now. But I remember a junior year, that was the time to try to score an internship for the summer. And what you did was you pre-selected 5 companies that you were interested in, and they would look at you and pick you. So it would be kind of a matching, almost like dating online, right? Swiping, no, okay. Is it right that you reject? And then what? So anyway, I was getting the swipes. Is it right that is the rejection? Anyway, long story short, I got 0 interviews, and 0 pairings per my transcripts, whatever it was. I was interested in them. They weren't as interested in me. So I was right next door in Zane Choker Hall, and I was at the computer, space, computer lab on the second floor. And I ran into a fraternity brother, and I said, "Hey man, did you score any interviews? I got a goose egg. I got nothing." And he said, "Yeah, I actually have one this afternoon with Sprint, which is an old company, telecom company that became, I think, T-Mobile or whatever." But he said, "I have an interview with Sprint, but I can't make it. I have a paper that I have to write." And I said, oh, so you're not going to go? So he's like, yeah, I'm not going to show up. I was like, well, what about your time slot? He's like, yeah, it's at 3:00 and I just can't be there. I said, do you mind if I go in your place? And he said, okay, that's fine. I'm not going to be there. So if you want to. So I went home, printed out the resume off my floppy disk, threw on my baggy, suit and tie, and biked back to campus. And I went, it was in Grafton Stovall, and that's where they were conducting interviews. And I went in that appointment time and I introduced myself. Hi, I'm Rick. And I really think Sprint is a special place. And I would love to have an internship here for the summer. And I got the internship. And how it turned out is that one of the interviewers knew my brother from JMU. So it was these connections. Again, I was born into it biologically, having a brother who went here and then knowing this one of the interviewers. And so that played into it a bit. But showing that interest, taking that initiative to fill a spot that was going to be otherwise open and no one show up, I went for it. And I went and had that internship. And then after the internship was done, they offered me a full-time job after graduation. And so that was in computer information systems, that's what I majored in. And while that job lasted about 2 years and I found out that was not my calling, it got me into the workforce. And what it did is it got me into a house renting with those same friends that I met freshman year in Weaver Hall, right in the Village. And it then kickstarted my career professional.
You know what I love? I love the fact that you showed up. So right now, there's this time more than any other time, you can show up online as often as you want, 24/7. You're wired for sound, right? But having to physically show up for something is a completely different set of rules, right? You showing up for something creates something in the atmosphere, whether it's a benefit to you from the standpoint that you receive something or you learn something, right? So not everywhere we're going to show up are we going to get the job or the interview. You happen to take advantage of a great situation. It sounds like you came prepared with knowing that you wanted to get this job. You were going to say what you needed to say in order to get the job because you needed a chance. You needed a chance coming out of school. And I love the fact that you showed up. And I think there's so many times where folks are a little nervous to show up because we didn't have to show up in COVID, first and foremost. And then we sort of got in the habit of being online and not showing up. And I know even for myself, the other week, I did not want to show up to this event. And you would think that this is crazy because I'm an entrepreneur and we should show up all the time. So there was an event that I was actually invited by another JMU person. Oh, and I'm going to share a regret. When I was listening to his story, I'm going to share a regret that I have. But I was invited to an event by another JMU person. It was in downtown Arlington. It was up on the rooftop, and it was called Founders and Funders. So as an entrepreneur, you want to connect with funders because you're always in need of cash to get your company to the next level. And I remember it was on a Wednesday night. It was absolutely beautiful. There was no reason not to go because it was 72 degrees and just perfect. And I was invited, like I said, by a friend. So I begrudgingly get in my car, drive in traffic to get all the way up there. And even when I had parked, I just had this bad attitude about I don't want to be here. And as soon as I walked into the lobby, because it was after hours, so the other person that came to the lobby with me, it was obvious that we were going to the same place. And I said, oh, are you going to the Founders and Funders event? And he said, yeah. And he asked me what I did, and I told him about Turn Mentoring, and he was like, oh, that's really cool. I said, well, what university did you go to? And he said, James Madison University. And it was almost like I got this thing from the universe that was like, you're in the right place, right? You're with the deuce. Yeah, you're in the right place. So that kind of brought me back down. And I didn't know this guy. I mean, he was years younger than me, but he was here at the event. He was a banker. And so went upstairs and started networking with folks. And by the time I left that evening, not only did I get networked with an amazing group of people, and I actually realized I knew more people. I knew at least 3 or 4 people at that event. I thought I was only going to know one, but I didn't know who else was invited. So showing up was half the battle. I left that event having reconnected with somebody that I had met, 4 or 5 years ago. And it turns out he's in charge of this, I'm going to call it secret society, but it's a group called Mindshare up in DC. And it's a really amazing group of entrepreneurs that are very well connected. Ted Leonsis kicks it off every single year. For those of you who don't know Ted Leonsis, he's the owner of Monument Sports, which is a lot of the Washington, DC sports teams, amongst other things. But anyway, so it's a really great group to network with. But that reminded me about showing up. And then my regret. I was thinking about what you said. So what I did not do that I think Rick did a lot better than me was Rick leveraged his connections in school for business purposes. I mean, even today, you're like, oh yeah, Dave Moya, and all these. And I'm like, wow, you stay connected with these folks from a business perspective.
Absolutely.
Which is super cool. I did not do that as well. Like I wanted to be friends with everybody. And so we were very friendly and we would go out, to bars or restaurants and stuff, but I never actually thought to leverage that into business. And so why not take something that is this common connection of the university and our time spent here? And why not start talking about things in business? And, as a woman in the mid 90s coming out of here, I just kept with the women. I didn't necessarily network with my male counterparts. So I would say if you get a chance here at JMU or during homecoming, because a lot of us are running around campus, Friday's like the big board day, if y'all didn't know about this. So you'll see tons and tons of alumni in Cobb because all the boards are coming back to have their meetings. They start at 8 a.m. and they finish by lunch, and then all the boards get together and they go to that, what's that room called? That one, the common room? Yeah. And foyer. They go to the common foyer in Hartman and they have a big lunch. So that's a chance for you to get to know other Dukes that are running around Cobb, because we'd love to get to know you. We're waiting for students to come up to us and talk to us and tell us all these different things about campus. So I would say that's my one regret, is I didn't do what you did. You're much smarter than me in that regard.
Yeah, I really fell back on my curiosity and being a people person, right? Getting to know people and their backgrounds and where you're from. A common thing you hear in DC or any big city when you're working is, what do you do, right? So we'll meet at a party. Oh, Tina, nice to meet you. What do you do? And it always feels a little cold when you say, what do you do? Because what you do doesn't necessarily mean that's who you are. And that's one interesting little tidbit, is that don't wrap yourself up in your identity and your self-worth necessarily. If you're good at your job, bad at your job, because there is so much more in and outside of that. And what I took away from getting 0 interviews and pre-matches for that campus visit was that, they might not have seen in me what I knew, but I knew people, but I also knew myself and I knew my story. And so what I shared, kind of coming back to the interview process, and, what did I say when I showed up? Well, my transcripts were my transcript. Did I use both of my repeat forgives? Absolutely. Were they both in my major? Absolutely. They were both in computer information systems, coding COBOL, an old language that very few people do, although the government still has all their mainframes and stuff, I think, on that. But so there really wasn't much of a story to tell, because they can look and they can see A, B, C, D, E, F, right? So it's just letters on a piece of paper. But what I knew when I went in is I knew my story and I knew myself. And I could share with them not only where I came from, who I knew, but also what drives me and what my passions were. So what were some of the questions I asked them? What does success look like at this company? I'm going to be coming in as an internship. I'm fairly low level. What does this look like? Tell me what, in your eyes, a successful intern would do. What's a day in the life of an intern? Will there be opportunities to get to know my coworkers? Are there happy hours? Are there things that we can do together outside of work? And so basically really playing on the interpersonal side and the relationship side of things, culture. I knew my job was going to be in a cubicle, typing in code that I was not very good at, and trying to make a computer talk, right, and spit out output. And I learned after those 2 years that really my strengths and my interest is with the human. And I think we play out now with AI and everything that you guys are hearing about, that we're all hearing about. This is all really new for us, even though it's been years in the making, is that my take on AI and where I like to spin it is not artificial intelligence, but authentic impact, right? What is something, those are the letters that I like to prescribe to that. What is authentic? People want authenticity today. They want to know yourself. What did I do when I showed up to that interview? I was my authentic self. I could just tell them where I was coming from and what my experiences have been and how I could be a benefit that summer for that internship. And then it wasn't until down the road that I really discovered my purpose and my impact. But I wanted to kind of segue into how you and I met, because showing up and actually taking the initiative is really what led Tina and I 2 years ago to cross paths. So what had happened was, through my neighborhood and through my community, right? You get to know your neighbors. And once you become a dad, your kids go to school with your neighbor's kids. And so I had gotten to know some guys in the neighborhood. And so one of the guys had asked me, hey, do you want to join me? I'm a member of this forum that meets once a week. and they had breakfast, and then it's a bunch of entrepreneurs and business people that are in a room, and there's doctors, there's the carpet cleaning people, the windows people, there's the IT person, the doctors, lawyers, all of that. And it's basically a room of new people. Now, granted, you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s and up. So that's one other thing, is that you're never too old to continue to be making these connections. And so he had invited me and said, hey, do you want to come? You have a small business. You have a production company. Maybe someone in that room could use your services. And so I said, great, I'm going to show up, right? So 6 a.m, we show up to the hotel. We have breakfast. And anyway, everything had wrapped up. Everyone had a chance to give a quick little spiel about what you do. And, you're open to conversation. And hey, if you know someone who could use production services for events, then, hey, come see me after breakfast and we'll talk. So anyway, through those course of conversations afterwards, I went up and I found a gentleman who was nice, and he, had worked within, commercial real estate and mortgages and other things within that field. And so I approached him and just introduced myself, and, oh, okay, great. Oh, well, where'd you go to school and all of that? And so once we made that connection that I told him I went to JMU, he's like, that's funny. My wife went to JMU and she's an entrepreneur, and she's hustling and getting her business up off the ground. You too, I should connect you to. And so ultimately that is kind of what led us down the way, was again, showing up, going to an event, a room full of strangers, except the guy that I knew who I was his guest. And then again, through having those conversations, but genuinely being interested in the other people in the room and saying, tell me a little bit more about your business. And oh, by the way, my wife just happened to went to your university, and we were just 2 years apart in graduation or so. Couple years apart.
4 and a half.
4.5. So anyway, that's kind of
that's how we met. But so you offered the class, I think, some great advice as far as getting to know yourself. And when you go out to, whether it's an internship interview, a job interview, or just talking to friends in general, he said that the first question people tend to ask you is, what do you do? Well, you don't get that asked on campus. You might get asked, what's your major? Yeah. Right. And since all of you are in Cobb, you're assuming that, okay, well, at least we're all business majors, right? But one of the things that I like to think about is, instead of asking, what do you do, so that you can really understand who somebody is what do you like to do? That's a little bit different, right? Just adding that one word in there changes the whole question. Because what you like to do may not necessarily be what you are currently doing. I know that when I was here and I was a business major, did I like it? I don't know. It was hard. I promptly failed Dr. Alex Gabbin's accounting class, and I decided that I needed to go seek other paths at JMU, and I went to the College of Arts and Letters. But if somebody had asked me back then, what do you like to do? I would have said something very similar to Rick. I would have said, you know what? I like to deal with people. I like to connect with individuals. I don't like sitting behind a spreadsheet with a bunch of numbers. I don't like having to sit in a room by myself doing a project. I like teamwork. I like getting up and speaking publicly. I like these things. And if I had said that, I bet you anything, some of the people that I was meeting at the time, whether it was my advisor, my professors, even my parents, would have probably said, well, if you like those things, why are you doing this?
Sure.
Right? They might have given me some sort of clue that I was on not necessarily the best path for myself. So by asking people what they like, you may be able to not only get to know them a little bit better on an interpersonal level, but by also sharing what you like to do, you might also elicit things from other people as to, you know what, because that's more fun to talk about anyways, right? When you talk about what you do and it's like, oh, I run an ed tech company and, we partner people in mentorship, the eyes gloss over and it's like, well, how does that apply to me? But when you talk about, well, what I really like to do is I like to connect people across generations. I like to bridge the gap between students and their future career. That's what I like to do. And they're like, oh, well, how do you do that? Right? So I think when he gave you that comment of thinking about your authentic self, think about it in that term. What do you like to do? And the other comment I'll say is Carol used to have me do this. Do you still do the identity map? Okay. Y'all did your identity map this year? Those are really cool. Don't throw that in the trash and think this is a nice little class exercise. Those are actually super helpful when it comes to knowing who you are, expanding on that, and being able to go into any conversation and touching base on some of those areas. So, commonalities, right, as to like where we live and who we know. And so you start with your name, and then you put your spokes going out. And then on each spoke, you put like an aspect of yourself, whether it's how you identify, I'm a military dependent, I'm a Chinese American. So I kind of put that on my spoke. And then when I go into conversation, I talk about, well, what does it mean to be a military dependent? What does it mean to be a Chinese American? How does that play out in my life? And how do I want to see that play out in the things that I do when it comes to work? So really understanding not just the adjective or the noun that you're giving yourself, but the why behind those things will better serve you in your interviews and your interpersonal connections as you move forward. Does that make sense? Okay, just needed a quick check-in with the class there.
Yeah, I was going to say, and it's a great point about really following those passions and your interests and what you like to do. And if you can marry that with a major here on campus, then you're really setting yourself up for just a great ride moving forward. And you guys have so much what I call runway, time ahead of you to learn and discover and figure out what it is. I didn't like what I majored in. I didn't like my first job. I did it because there were job opportunities. I knew that, coming out in the late 90s, that's when the internet started really bubbling, and this .com thing was becoming a thing where you could go to a consulting firm or you could be a software engineer and you could do these things. But I didn't like the work. I like people. I liked the happy hours. I liked getting to know the people in the office. Maybe I could get a promotion that way, being likable and just willing and there when they need somebody. So really what I like to do, it's one of these things where we look back on our lives and we've lived long enough to know the age of 40 kind of sticks out to us as far as, and you and I had shared this before, Leedy, coming into this class and what that meant about, how you approached relationships, connections, interpersonal, but also passions around that age time. Because, for me, I didn't find my passion until after 40. So I lived basically a lifetime like I did. I was under my parents' roof from 0 to 18. And then from 22 to 40, those next 18 years, was really kind of finding out what it was that I really was passionate about.
Well, wait, can I pause right there?
Sure.
Because if I'm in the audience, I'm thinking, 18 years, you were like lost in the desert, and what's going on in those 18 years? So you got to step them through kind of your mindset in those 18 years, because sometimes it's work. And sometimes it's discovery, right? So
it's all work.
Step us through the mindset.
It's all work and it's all discovery. And so one thing that I did as I sold software and I was a consultant, and one thing we would do is we would show up on a client site and we would do what we call discovery. Stephen, you know all about these discovery calls, and Stephen's on my team. Travis, I can see formal name. I'm actually Jacob Richard. I go by Rick, but Travis, he's part of my team. And anyway, so we know about this discovery thing. So we would basically sit with a whiteboard and we would get to know, and we would ask the questions of these companies to understand where are they falling short in their people, their processes, and their technology, right? So that's kind of how we spun and sold our software. Hey, our software can automate all these things. And so that whole discovery process, when I look back on it and just kind of taking stock and trying new things, that was those 18 years between 22 and 40 for me. So it was just getting a job. That my sole focus was friends and a job when I came out of JMU. That was it. I took all the noise and everything that's happening around me, and my two focuses were having friends and getting a job. And so ultimately I landed in that job. And so what it took was actually taking the job, being on site and learning after 2 years. And I kind of have this rule of twos. Giving anything a 2-year chance is really worth it. 2 years for work. The first year, think of it as you're planting seeds. You're getting to know your coworkers. You're getting to understand what's expected of you on the job and your daily routine and what's a day in the life like. And getting at those 2 years, after those 2 years, you can kind of get an idea, hey, is this for me? Or, maybe I should look elsewhere. And so I did that. Now, it's not to say that the next employment opportunities afterwards, I wasn't starting to move forward. Every step that I took after that, and job change and industry change I did, I was actually stepping in the right direction. And I was finding my passion without really knowing it. So what happened after the IT job is that I got into consulting, and I still was doing IT work, but I went from behind the desk to in front of the customer. I was on site. the USDA, and we were just helping them with their accounting software. But I got to train them on the software. I got to take functionality enhancements, requests from them, and I would go back to our technical people and they would code it. And so I was learning to bridge the gap between technical, which is the world I came from, to now bridging in front of the customer and getting them what they wanted. So then into consulting. Then hit a little bit of a wall there and was dating a girl at the time whose sister happened to be in healthcare. And I then took a liking into healthcare and sales in healthcare. And I've had over 20-year career in healthcare. And it was in sales, it was in medical devices, surgical equipment. But I got to understand, I was pre-med coming into JMU, and I took zoology and botany, and I said, I'm not going to cut it. Again, the interest is not there. My technical acumen, my passion for this is not what I thought it was going to be. I wanted to be a doctor to please mom, dad, and grandma. But that ended up not being the thing. But here I was now, and then after that IT experience coming into healthcare, now I get to play doctor, and I get to wear scrubs, and I get to have clinical conversations. And so all of that was kind of in those 18 years of kind of discovery. And then ultimately where I landed in my passion and my purpose was life lived. I gave myself those chances and those opportunities to learn, to fail, to find what it was that was interesting to me. And then ultimately backing into opportunities to take a software position, selling software to nonprofits. And I just love the work of nonprofits. And so you're hearing a lot of things from me. There's IT and there's podcasts and then there's healthcare. How does that all tie in? Well, I do all of. I still do healthcare stuff. I fundraise. I do live events. I MC and I auctioneer at galas. I raise money for organizations. Oh, and by the way, I also produce podcasts. What's at the heart of that? What is the line through to all of that? It's people and their stories. All of that is connected. People, their stories, their health. People, their stories on the podcast. People, their stories, the mission of a nonprofit. And so that's how it kind of all wound together. But I gave myself that chance and those multiple different variety of experiences over those 18 years to then get into 40. And now I'll be 50 this year. So I've had a decade plus after that to then really keep and digging in and honing in.
So all I'm going to say is welcome to the golden side.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's
awesome.
I swear to you guys, things keep getting better. They really do. They keep getting better.
No, I have a couple of questions because I was listening to your story, which I've known, but I always love hearing it again. So one of the questions is you're going through all of these different iterations of self and you're learning a lot. Was there ever any imposter syndrome going on during all of these years? Even now, is there ever any? So talk to us about imposter syndrome.
Only at every job that I'd ever had and starting in even talking in front of you guys and leading this discussion. Wow, have I really done that much? Here I am coming back to JMU. Future leaders are in the room. Have I really done that much? I was a failed software engineer coming out of college. Is that the example? Is that the takeaway from it?
That's interesting that could be the tape running in your head right now.
Absolutely.
That you're sitting in front of the future leaders of America and you're thinking, have I done enough with myself as a JMU alum?
Yeah.
That's fascinating to me.
And I'm not the example of the person who graduated doing the thing forever that I thought I would with the degree that I earned. And so what I instill in my kids, kind of the cheat code with all of this, is competence. Knowing your story, knowing yourself, being comfortable with that. Traumas, there's things that we all go through in our life and our backgrounds and where we come from. And it's just harnessing that and feeling that value in yourself and knowing even whatever job it is, you're contributing something bigger and better. And you're meeting people along the way. And so this journey of the different jobs without friends, and then ultimately without my wife and the support of my family, I don't get to this point. I think I don't get to the point in the fact that I feel that having that support and that confidence kind of helps kick in to do things like we are today. So with imposter syndrome, it's natural. And to me, it speaks to competence. And what I like to do ahead of podcasts and these things, I like to learn who I'm interviewing. Okay, so do you guys listen to podcasts? You guys have some favorite ones? Well, it's not.
Hopefully this will be one. Hopefully.
Yeah, please check them out. Spotify, Apple, we're there. Pod of DC. But it's, they're not stepping in cold to these interviews. A broadcaster isn't stepping in to a Commanders-Bears game on Monday night and just talking about what they're seeing in front of them. They know every player. They know the technicalities of the calls that the refs make on the field. They know the players, the history, and all of that. So what they find, and they speak with all of this confidence, and I've really learned, like play by play, if you really listen to these announcers and the depth and breadth of the information they have.
Oh, they've done their homework.
And they've done their homework, but they worked at it. But with that gets them that confidence to talk about it. So putting the work in and the preparation when Tina and I sat down, it wasn't just, hey, I met your husband, tell me about yourself. I Googled the heck out of Tina. I was learning about Tim mentoring, and I was making targeted questions that were actually value add instead of spending too much time. Where did you grow up? And what was your favorite place to eat? And all of those things. We now are actually taking a very baseline conversation, and with that work and research, we're now elevating that conversation into really huge takeaways. And so imposter syndrome is natural. It speaks to competence. So the more you know yourself and your story and even the technical aspect of your job, the more that you feel like you can present and overcome that. But every time I step on stage for an event, if I'm doing a podcast, something live like this, yes, a little bit always, there's always somebody over your shoulder saying, are you good enough? Are you qualified to be in this position to talk about things?
Yeah, your honesty and vulnerability is great on that. I'll take the other side of imposter syndrome. So Rick used the C word, confidence is where he takes that. For me, where I take imposter syndrome is to courage. And, a lot of people, we study imposter syndrome at Turn Mentoring, particularly with students. And we always learn that there is a degree of imposter syndrome. Like, how am I supposed to take everything that I studied at university and now all of a sudden apply that to this job? Or maybe it's not even the job that you wanted, but it's the job that you got. And you're trying to figure out, well, how am I going to take this finance background of mine and apply it to marketing? Because maybe that's where they hired you, right? And so there's always a certain level of imposter syndrome. But what I think about imposter syndrome is that if you, and this is actually shared to me recently by a dear friend, if you are in a room where you feel like you have imposter syndrome, welcome. You have arrived. And why is that? Because you're in a room where you feel as though you have a place to grow. And that's what we're all supposed to do, right? So that's where I take it to courage. Now you have to have the courage to stand in the pocket, to be there, to listen well, to learn well, and to take whatever it is that you learn and move forward. So Rick has this power of two, right? So the first year is the year that he's learning things. The second year is the year that he's refining things. For me, I take it one more year. So it's always been this way in my life. The first year, anybody see that movie Forrest Gump? No, not yet. Oh, you got to see it. Oh, okay. A few of you have. That's good. So Forrest Gump is an awesome epic story about this guy who finds himself in so many different crazy things in life. And so I call it, the first year for me is always Forrest Gumping my way through whatever it is I'm doing, because I've probably never done it before. So there's definitely imposter syndrome going on, but I have to have the courage and the confidence to show up early and often, listen and learn super well. So once I get past that first year, if I've done a good job in the listening and the showing up and the following through, that second year is about building out efficiencies. For me, it's about, okay, so now I've been here. What can I do to apply my skills? Or how can I now enter the conversation with some of my thoughts? Or what can I do to connect people? That's the year where I start trialing a bunch of stuff for me, because now at least I have a little bit of the background, but that second year is about building out efficiencies. And that third year is all about mastery. I feel like if you've done your work for those first 2 years, by the third year, you should be in a position to help teach other people what it is that you have learned over the last couple of years. And my goal in life is always to make myself obsolete. So when I'm done with that third year, I'm hoping to teach someone to come up behind me to then take on the role so that I can go do other things and I can grow myself. And I think with this generation in particular, gone are the days my parents, I don't know about your parents, they stayed in a job for 30 plus years, of course, right? And that was the goal of that generation. My generation, I'm a Gen Xer, we're Gen Xers. It's a little bit different. Like, he talked to you about different jobs that he's had the privilege of pursuing. I'm very much the same. I spent 22 years in medical device. Singular lane, vertical market. I was in business development. I started as a sales rep frontline and moved up into leadership positions across the United States, traveled all the time. It was really awesome. And then about 11 years ago, I became an entrepreneur. on accident. I didn't mean to do it, but I needed to do it for my family purposes. And becoming an entrepreneur helped me realize that there were skills that I had developed and that I had mastered in my singular vertical lane that I could apply to other industries. It never occurred to me that I could go outside of my industry because I was still in that mindset of my parents that, well, I can change jobs and I can change companies in this singular vertical of med tech, but to take that and move it into real estate, or to take that and move it into an ed tech company, is that even possible? What do I know about that? And so one of the characteristics Rick and I share is curiosity, extreme curiosity. And so having the curiosity, the courage, and the confidence to show up in those new lanes after you have helped somebody else basically make you obsolete is what helps us grow as human beings throughout life. So I hope for that for you. But yeah, the after 40 thing, I think it was interesting what you said about after 40.
Yeah.
The pre-40, I was on a singular track. I was like, get out there and earn as much money as possible, because these are the years where I am young, I'm hungry, I've got my health, let's go. And all I wanted to do was increase how much money I was making every single year. And I was in sales. So a lot of that was within my control, right? I needed to just exceed expectations in sales. But in my over 40 life, it's not that the ambition went away. It's just that there was a refocus of what was my priority. So previous to 40, it was pretty much my single life. And then after 40, there was my family life. And so not something that we discuss in college, really, right? We don't talk about like, what are you going to do when you have a family? But I think I think it should be a course, right? It should be like, hey, these are things that you might want to think about.
Yeah. But I mean, married at 32, kids at 34, 35, I needed some space. I needed some space after college to just, again, find a job that I enjoy, and just giving yourself that space and grace. Because I think we tend to wrap deadlines around things. Now, the only deadlines really are in this classroom. Hey, you got to turn this in at this date and this time. When it comes to the game of life, don't put deadlines on yourself that aren't necessary. You don't have to say, I'm going to be married by 30. I'm going to be too old to have kids at 35. Anything like that. It's just, these are things that we get a lot of noise in society about, and it's just unnecessary. And so you got to give yourself that space and grace. Is your hand up for a question? Yeah.
You were talking about confidence and courage.
Yeah.
How do you think you can build that? Because that's not something that comes naturally to everybody.
Sure.
How can you become more confident, more courageous?
Yeah. Failing. Finding something that you are working your tail off on and it maybe not working out, but it's sticking with it and just knowing and identifying that. And so to me, a lot of these lessons learned and these takeaways, we didn't have sitting at those desks where you guys sit now. We had to live life. We had to give that space and grace. We had to give ourselves this time to do those things. Okay. So that job that you will get right after you graduate, if it's something you do for 30 or 40 years, congratulations. That's awesome. You found it really early on. For the majority of us, it's going to be a launching pad. Okay. So finding that courage is a lot. There's a lot that comes with confidence that I think it's in your aptitude, your technical aptitude, which was very low for me in my job. So where did my confidence come from? Well, I was young and I, didn't think that anything could hurt me, harm me, stay out late, get up early, rinse and repeat and do that. But I've had friends along the way, and I've had people there to talk to share with when I was frustrated, and now moving extended, now a wife and kids and those sorts of things. So yeah, finding that, it's just giving yourself that chance, that grace, that look, keep going. If it's meant to be, whether it's a partner or if it's a job, fantastic. But it might not last forever either. So again, don't put that pressure on yourself. It's gotta be. My parents were married almost 50 years. I hope that's going to be the case for me, and I hope nothing changes that. But life happens, things happen. And so you have to just kind of keep going with the flow. Just keep swimming. Another movie reference, as easy as it is, keep playing, and just give yourself those chances, to go up, to go down.
The confidence and courage thing, if I can add, the only way that anyone builds confidence and courage is also to build resilience. And the way that that happens is to put yourself in uncomfortable situations. I think far too often, we're in a very cush society, right? And we have lots of things available to us. And even here at JMU, this is like this beautiful snow globe. I mean, driving down here into the valley and seeing all these trees changing colors in Shenandoah is just, it's picture perfect. Yeah, I feel like this is a fake movie set when I come down here because it's so gorgeous. But putting yourself in uncomfortable situations is where you end up building that courage and confidence. And so he said fail. That was the word. I'll add on to that. You want to fail forward, you want to fail fast, and you want to fail fabulously, right? I love alliteration. So fail forward, fail fast, and fail fabulously. So failing fast means when you're coming into a situation, even though it might be uncomfortable, that's okay. But at some point in time, your gut is going to tell you whether you're traveling the right path or you're not. And if you're not sure, also surround yourself with people who will tell you the truth. And you should ask them for that feedback. Like, hey, I'm going to try this. These are my goals of this. If I can't see the forest through the trees when I'm about 3 weeks, 6 months, 2 years in, whatever that time frame is, can you call me out on things? Because I want to make sure that I'm moving on the right path. So you can always surround yourself with those people that would be bumpers for you to help you in building out your courage and confidence. But failure is not something that I think some of the younger generations are familiar with because we've done a lot to make sure that there's so many safety measures in place, right? From cars to communication to there's just a lot of safety measures and there should be. But at the same time, that limits our ability to take risks and test boundaries. And so we want you to safely take risks and test boundaries in order to build that courage and confidence, which in turn will build your resilience. And by the way, for the most part, like when I go out and I have to do something that is so uncomfortable, I keep thinking to myself, well, am I going to die today in doing this? And the answer is typically no. I'm not going to die by showing up at an event and connecting with people or, talking about something or learning about something that I've never learned about before. It's going to be really weird and they're probably going to talk over my head. Oh my gosh, that funders and founders thing. You know how many VC people and bankers I met? Series this and blah, blah. And they were using all this language and I'm hanging in there best I can, truth be told. But I'm like, oh my gosh, do you have a debt instrument? Are you on, this, or have you considered this? And where are you in your funding? And I'm just like, my head's spinning and I'm doing my best to keep up with that. But like I said, at the end of it, I got a connection that's going to help me learn this language and get connected in that space better. And you better believe I'm going to have a tremendous amount of imposter syndrome. I'm going to have to take everything inside me and be like, I have the courage to show up for this.
Yeah, I kind of backed into a mentor type of relationship in that first job that I was so bad at. It was evident that my work wasn't great. And so there was an older gentleman, probably the age, I thought he was so old at that time, and he's probably my age now. And he pulled me aside into a boardroom. It was middle of the day. And he says, how are you feeling? And this was someone who I would sit in like a morning meeting with, and he was an advanced software engineer, tons of letters after his name, very, great at what he did and had been doing it for years. And he saw me, 22, 23, and just said, how are you feeling? I said, I don't know. I'm a little overwhelmed right now. I'm not really enjoying what I do. And I ended up crying in the boardroom with this man who was just kind of a coworker. And he said, you have gifts, you have skills. He says, but I understand. And you know what? There's more for you after this. And he says, but I would start probably looking. Once you start to hit that point where not only I was now at a point where I was emotionally showing how frustrated and upset I was that I wasn't enjoying the work and I wasn't good at the work, it really became time. And it was that day that freshened up the resume. And then 6 months later, I was out. So, I backed into that mentorship kind of relationship. And when I think about my time at JMU, I didn't have a mentor. We're all in this together, right? We're all kind of swimming and trying to figure everything out as a student, right? As an undergrad. And so when I look to my kids, I just got a progress report for my kids, and it said on the progress report, hey, if your child has any questions about their grade, have them talk to me. Come up to me after class. It's written on the progress report. Come up to me. What I would say is if you don't feel like there's mentorship because you guys are all in this same boat together, fellow sophomores, juniors, seniors on up, then talk to your professor after class. take that next step and say, where do things need to maybe change? Where can I go? Professor Hamilton, what are you saying? Where could I be better? What could I do? It's really an opportunity for a micro mentorship relationship to be right here with an incredible person right here, to be so fortunate to have such a great professor in this room that you could go immediately after school. If you're not feeling something, you can be honest. Maybe you're not liking it. What can we do here? We're in this class. How can we make this semester work? And taking that opportunity to do that. I did not necessarily, I would go to my programming teacher, COBOL, and say, can you help me finish this code? Which was not really her job. Her job was more to kind of guide me and help me try to figure it out. So with mentorship for you, here you are now, these years later, right now as a founder and leaving a legacy through mentorship. What was that spark? It was after 40 that you really fell into this mentorship thing? Was it kind of mentorship was in the background and then boom, all of a sudden?
No, it was, so I said earlier that I'm an accidental entrepreneur. Like I did not come out of JMU thinking, oh, I'm going to own my own company. I'm going to do this. I've never thought about that. It became if necessity is the mother of invention, that's what happened with me. So I spent 22 years in med tech. I loved it. I had no intention of leaving. I have a family. I'm traveling 90% of the time. My then 5-year-old says to me, Mommy, you've been gone too long. And it's a story that I've told a million times. And that was a changing point in my life. I was like, wow, I really heard those words at another level that had me rethink, what am I doing? Who am I spending time with? How am I prioritizing my family and work? And so that was a struggle of about 2 years, just trying different things, demoting myself, changing jobs, all of that. And then my husband, who you met first before we met, said, why don't we burn the boats, which meant let's leave our corporate careers and let's build our own company, to which I thought he was absolutely nuts because I had never trained in owning a company. What did I know about that? And he was like, no. Listen, I'm the subject matter expert on this and I can run the operations in that. And you're the business development expert on this and you can run it in this. And so he's like, together we can make this work. And what we don't know, we will figure out, or hopefully we can hire towards, right? So, it took a lot of thinking. And next thing I know, I was like, okay, I think of all my options, this one best suits where I am today. And I decided to take this leap of faith with him because I also thought, what's the worst that could happen? Maybe I end up going back to working for someone else in the corporate job. And I can proudly say that it's been 11 years and Cobalt Settlements is the company that he and I started in Arlington, Virginia. And so we are a title and settlement company up there. But even in that, I still didn't know what I was going to be when I grew up because that wasn't my lane. I told you what my lane was, but I wasn't going to be whittling a medical device in my garage. That also wasn't who I was. I wasn't an engineer either. And so it was actually coming back and serving. And sometimes I say, when you can't figure things out for yourself, go help someone else. And so that's where this whole concept came about. So at the time I was coming back to JMU, I was guest lecturing, working with Professor Hamilton. I was keynote speaking. I was judging. I ended up becoming the chair of the management board here. And in my serving of the students, I realized something about myself. I was like, wow, there's so much like me. At that time, I'm so much like them. Like I had my trepidations about courage and confidence. I had not built resilience yet. I was the first of my generation to go to college. I didn't have anybody ahead of me that said, this is what you now need to do. I had to figure that out for myself, my siblings, and my cousins. And so I was really a nervous cat, like in this, what am I going to do coming out of school? And so Professor Hamilton actually, she charged me with all this stuff that you're doing in class. I feel like there's something more that you can do. And I'm looking at her and she loves this story because I tell it all the time. And I'm sitting here thinking, come on, Carol, time, talent, treasure. I think I deliver all three of those exactly. How much more? So she will get blood out of a turnip if she can. And so, because it's Carol, I kept thinking, for weeks, what did this woman mean? What else can I deliver to this university that I'm not already delivering? So I went back to her and I said, a lot of times after class, students will come up privately and have conversations with me and then we'll stay in touch and I'll mentor them or we'll connect on LinkedIn. And I've really enjoyed that. Why don't I build a mentorship program for your class? And she was already very adept to mentorship because she had executed to it before. But I wanted to do it on a new level. And we started talking about it and we brought it to her very first class. And not only was I able to serve my younger self and live my legacy through mentorship, but then I connected with people like you and other JMU alum who were saying, you know what? I would love to connect with a student on a one-to-one basis. I would love to be there for them and listen to what, is going well for them. Listen to what, they need help with. Listen to who they need connections to. And I'll do whatever I can to help serve them. And so when I had enough of these folks coming in, it was like herding cats. And I realized at that point in time, I need to solve this problem. And the solve for that problem was to build an ed tech platform. And by the way, I am not a coder. I'm a comm major. So going back to imposter syndrome, what do I know about writing code on an ed tech company? I don't. And that's the truth of it. But I know how to solve problems. And I know with every problem that I solve, there's going to be another one that comes up. And I just keep solving problems and I just keep asking for help. And I just keep connecting with people to help me solve the problems to make this grow and get bigger. And so Turn Mentoring was born 4.5 years ago. And, we not only serve JMU, but we serve other universities as well. And I just keep growing. So instead of helping a class of 30 or 40, we now help thousands. And we connect alumni with universities. So that's the genesis of that. It was not at all like pre-thought. It was definitely after the fact.
And what Tina did was she found that and she had that calling from her family and just saying, okay, we need to redirect. And she had the support of her husband to do that. Really does take that support. And that little reminder, right? And so it came in the form of your child just asking you to be around more. And then Tina then took her resources and time and put that to build a company. And that is her 24/7. This is what she does. I do 3 things. I have a career in healthcare that I still manage. I own and operate a production company and I fundraise. And so I have multiple interests. I have a hard time just doing the healthcare. Just doing podcasting, you got to find a lot of sponsors to support your show. All the commercials in a podcast. Hey, this is brought to you by AG1, Athletic Greens, or hey guys, BetterHelp if you need this and that. There's all these commercials. Well, that's how they make a living podcasting full time, is these companies coming in and writing a check for advertising, just like they would do on the radio, just like they would do a TV ad, a drug commercial. That's how you monetize and sustain yourself as a podcaster. I'm not there yet. I have one sponsor, but I'm not there quite yet. But I'm not going to stop doing this. I love this and I love people and getting to know their stories. And the fundraising aspect just came at, again, at 40 was so monumental for me. I lost my dad and I lost my house. We had an oak tree fall on our house and we were home at the time. My 2 kids, everything thankfully didn't hit any of us. We got out unscathed and we rebuilt our house. And I changed careers. I went from healthcare for a brief bit. I got away from it and went into fundraising. And that's where I found my purpose. That's where it just really hit me. And I don't want to give that up either. I'm greedy like that. I want to do all 3 of these things. And so that is where now it becomes more of a time management and less of a, can I do this? Because I've lived enough long time to know when something's failing in the healthcare to try to fix that problem. Getting microphones to work. Hey, you know what? I've gotten them to work a lot of times and sometimes it doesn't happen, but we keep going. We're not going to stop there. And even fundraising, right? Sometimes we exceed our goals. Sometimes we meet it. Maybe we don't quite raise as much money at that gala that we were hoping to, but we continue to show up and we continue to do those things. And if you have those interests, if you love fantasy football and say, I want to make that a career. Okay, great. So you start boning up on the league, the software that runs some of these apps, right, that manage fantasy football. There's so many different ways now. We're so hyper connected and there's so many ways to start something out of a passion, out of an interest, and don't feel that that has to be everything that pays the bills, right? Your bills get higher as you have a family and a mortgage and all those things as time goes on. And so, that is a lot of behind, doing the things I do is to obviously support those. But the interest in those things is what really keeps me showing up and doing those things. So it's interesting. You can do multiple things, follow your passions, follow your purpose, finding those things. But I think really rooting yourself in that, we can call it for lack of a better term, a 9-to-5, something that will initially get your foothold in the workforce, earning a paycheck, hopefully being able to be independent. And then from that, you can play on the weekends a little bit. I like to say that I have my 9 to 5 and then I do my 5 to 9, right? So my 5 to 9 is this. It's booking interviews. It's reaching out to nonprofits to see if they have an event coming up that they need a fundraiser for. And so I divide my day. Oh yeah, I have to be a dad and a husband too. That's going to sit out. I fit that in somewhere in between. But anyway, just give space, grace, interests, passions, follow all of it. You can do all those things.
So, one of the reasons Rick and I wanted to come here today is obviously we're very passionate about interpersonal skills and how that helped us. And now hopefully you've seen how two individuals Forrest Gump their way, through that bridge from collegiate to career, and even in career continued to change and morph. And so I don't want you to believe that there is ever a linear path, right? It's not an A to B and it's going to be in this direction only. You may kind of go like this in life. You may meander a little bit. You might even, like me, take a step back in order to move 2 steps forwards, and that's going to be okay so long as you're staying true to yourself. I think Rick sharing his story, me sharing my story, you've heard of a couple of alumni who, have done it in our own ways. Truth be told, less than 27% of people who studied in a major in college actually end up continuing that career in their life. Less than 27%. So if you are an accounting major or a finance major or a comm major or whatever, you may end up doing something else, but taking those skills that you learned in that major and applying it to something that you're truly passionate about, which is what Rick said. Now, Rick, you said something that I think is really interesting, and that's something about this through line of your human connections. So, you took an opportunity with your roommate or your friend not going to that interview opportunity. You asked him, you went to that interview opportunity. You talked about sitting down with a mentor at Sprint and realizing that this isn't what I'm going to be when I grow up. And you took that personal opportunity. Can you tell a little bit, because, with these students trying to not only identify who they are on campus, what kinds of things they're going to get involved in order to extend their networks, what has that whole throughput of people and you getting different jobs? Like, for instance, have you ever gotten a job where you didn't know somebody? You did something online and you got a job.
No, and it's even down to the placement or what do they call it? We used to call them just headhunters, right? So placement firms where you would send your resume, recruiters, where you would send your resume and then they would, they're contracted with a company who's looking to fill a position. They get your resume and try to find a fit. But do you feel like on your piece of paper, or if you were to put a resume together, okay, what high school you went to, if you played sports or were a cheerleader or did something like that, your grades freshman year, do you feel that tells your story? Doesn't tell your full story, does it? And ultimately in an interview process, that's exactly what they're looking at. They're like, okay, well, what are your qualifications? What are your transcripts, your grades? I could tell you I was a very average student. I was a very above average networker and friend maker. And so basically that's how, my degree was 4.0 plus in that regard. So, I look at, gaining networks and friends and expanding that way as both intentional and unintentional. And when I look back on my life, there were a lot of unintentional things. I was just doing it because it felt right, because I am that people person. I'm curious. I want to know where someone's from when I first met them freshman year. What was that like? High school? Oh, do you know so-and-so? I think I know someone from there. And so, these opportunities and even how we met, that was more of an intentional thing versus unintentional. So unintentional, you're swimming around, you're taking in your surroundings and just kind of observing, and then seeing something that's interesting, a club, an activity, and then just saying, why not? Give it a shot. Or asking the roommate, where are you going tonight? I'm going to this party off campus, this. Great, come along. How about it? So that's kind of fairly unintentional, intentional. But then the intentional things with even how we met was, I had a neighbor who, another dad, our kids go to school together, and he's a part of the networking group that once a week, they have breakfast together, and it's a chance to pitch your business a little bit. You could be a plumber, an architect, a lawyer, a doctor, and you're trying to kind of network with these established things. You pay dues, you kind of pay to be a part of that. And you can look at fraternity life like that as well. You're kind of paying to be a part of these things, right? You have dues to pay, but it's well worth it. And I see my man in letters back there. So it's well worth it. The friendships that you're going to get, right? Whether you pay dues or not. This is another one of those networking groups you pay dues for. And you come in. And so he asked me to join. He says, well, you own a production company and maybe there's someone in there who wants to put on a live event, fundraise, do a pod, something like that. And so I ended up going with him there. I saw an opportunity to branch my business out. And so basically I show up, 6 a.m., 6:30 breakfast, and then a chance to meet people afterwards. And so I approached a gentleman who I was, he just seemed like a really nice guy. And wanted to introduce myself, and he caught a little bit about my background that sounded interesting to him. And he's like, oh my God, you should meet my wife. She went to JMU. We established that I went to JMU. He's like, she went to JMU. She's an entrepreneur. She's building this thing right now. It's around mentorship. Oh my God, I need to put you guys in touch. And, within 6 months, she and I were doing a podcast together, and here we are to this stage. But there was an opening. Again, that door was slightly cracked, just like that interview. There was a door, an opportunity to go to this business forum, to meet people who I wouldn't know in walks of life, and at least share my work and share what I do. And then I could have left right after breakfast. I could have just called it, set up, I got my day job, I got to go there. But I stayed. This was during the week, so I was missing something. I was giving something up to then go do this other thing, right? Don't tell the boss. So, but I stayed, and I stayed after breakfast, and I wanted to meet some of the people in the room because I thought they were interesting, and I thought they provided maybe a service or something that I could use, or I knew someone.
We did two very important things, which they sound so simple, but they're very hard to do in reality. And that is, you showed up. He showed up to something that he had never shown up for before. And it can be daunting to show up in a group of about 50 people in a networking situation and know that you're going to pitch your business. I mean, if that's not nerve-wracking, and it was at 7 a.m, right?
Yeah.
So you're up bright and early to go pitch your business to a group of strangers. So he showed up, which I love. So one of the things that, we want you to take away from today is to definitely show up, right? Even if it's uncomfortable, you know nothing about it, it's okay. Just show up. That's half the battle. And then the second thing you did was you followed up. So he meets my husband at this networking event. He establishes that I also went to JMU, and he could have just said, you know what, that's really nice that she went to JMU. I know a lot of people that went to JMU, and left it at that. But Rick didn't just do that. Rick ended up going online, looking some things up about who I was, how we could be connected. And then he actually picked up the phone and he called me. And I was like, wow, this is really unique that somebody, because my husband had said, oh yeah, I met this guy. He might reach out to you. And I'm thinking, maybe, maybe not. One of the things that I do often is talk in front of classes. And I always offer to everybody, please connect with me on LinkedIn. And less than 10% do. So I'm going to offer to you, please connect with me on LinkedIn. Tina Fox, Turn Mentor.
Yeah, same.
Connect with Rick Bernstein on LinkedIn. This is going to establish a network for you. So the fact that you followed up, so I will say the riches are in the follow-up, ranked fortune is in the follow-up. So when you follow up, that's where the fortune is. So now Rick and I have done a couple of podcasts together. He said, hey, listen, if you're going to be going on campus during homecoming, let's do a turn live and inside a classroom. We'll do it through the Pod of DC. And I was like, seriously? And he drove down here with all of his equipment. He was here at 6 a.m. to set all of this up. I rolled in at 7:30 and all bright-eyed, and Rick was already all set up. And it was just amazing. And he even had his buddy Travis come all the way from Wilmington, Delaware to help support this whole thing. So you never know when you show up and you follow up where those things are going to lead. So two very important things, not necessarily easy to execute. So one of the things that we haven't talked about yet, but I'm curious as to your thoughts on this. We grew up in a time where we didn't have the internet. We didn't have social media. We didn't have AI. We didn't have a lot of these things. And we learned how to connect with people. And one of the things that I read over and over again in different articles, Forbes, Fortune, whatever, Business Insider, is that we see, the generations that are now coming up having to come up in a world where they are doing remote business. They are doing hybrid business. How is it that you could talk to this audience today about, how do you connect when everything is kind of at a distance online? Everybody's applying online through Indeed and all of these other apps, and they're sending out 100 resumes at one time and they're getting nothing. It's like screaming into the void. So how do people connect in a world that is hyper connected over the internet, but maybe less connected on the interpersonal?
Yeah, we talked about that in analogy with parenting. They say that we've become so over-parenting with them in person and under-parenting them online, right? So a lot of times, what you live and experience one way online, it could be very different, right? Your life could be very different in person than how it's displayed online. So, the tools for us, Gen Xers, right? I'm still not, I'm savvier over time because I kind of have to be doing this work, but it's one of those things where it's just not native to us and how we came up. So we didn't have that benefit to be able to make really fast connections, whether it's dating or job applications online. But what still applies today are these opportunities outside of work. I've worked from home for 20 years. So everything I run out of this business as well as healthcare, I work from home. It's sales, and then I have to go to the hospital or surgery center or something like that. So if there's opportunities in work to show up and whether it's work optional 3 days a week or that, show up and be in the office. I think to me, there's nothing more isolating, I feel like, than just being at home in your house. You're seeing the dishes that need to be done, the dog needs to be walked. There's so many things that could be done around you. So I think it's really important to having some aspect of going into the office. But let's say the job that you get is 100% remote. Well, then it goes back to when you log off, how are you spending that time? And now there's so many just Eventbrites and so many different sites that have so many networking opportunities, cocktail hours, whether you're buying on music, all these, what we call like these distribution lists and boards that people would kind of congregate over a thing, something thematically that you're of interest in. You like working on technical things, repairing cars, you have hobbies in and outside of what you do, finding those groups online and seeing if there's a meetup. One of the things I did in my community is that one of the dads who I went to that forum with that I was telling you about, he's a car guy and 2 other neighbors are car guys. I'm not really a car guy, but I'm a community guy. I like getting people together. So what we started in our town, I live in Vienna, Virginia, is a cars and coffee event. So they get to geek out on the car stuff.
Yeah.
They get to geek out on the car stuff. And then what we do is we created cars and coffee t-shirts. We sell them for $30 a piece, and then we get it to a foundation for food insecurity. So for families who are hungry in the area. And so we're working off each other's kinds of things. So we're kind of isolated managing our families, but we connected in the neighborhood, whether it's a dog walk, whether it's, you're out for a cig, back in the days, how you connect outside the bar. Those little things, interests, and just everyday life, being able to connect, I think, with other people is just so vital to then, because, we started this whole cars and coffee and it's only grown and grown and grown, and we've raised more money for these foundations. So I would just say any opportunity, as remote and virtual as it is, find some way to connect, whether in the office, professionally, through the job, or just through your own interests, hobbies, other things you like to do outside of work.
So let's talk about the practical aspect of that, because you are a practiced people person, right? And we grew up in a time where we had to connect to people all the time. So one of the things that I worked with Professor Hamilton on in some of our classes a few years ago was the identity map. Have you all done an identity map? Okay. Have you pulled out that identity map since you did it as a class exercise? No. You all started with your name in the center, right? And then you spoked it out, and you spoked it out to nouns and adjectives about your life, right? So I always said when we would work together is go a step further in knowing who you are, because if you want to be a practiced people person, you have to really know yourself, right? It's so much easier to get involved in a conversation with others when you can draw in certain commonalities and you know yourself really well. So if you were just to tell people like, well, this is my name, this is where I go to school, this is what my major is, that's one thing. That's a lot of information. But to be able to talk about what it is that you like. So Rick and I were talking about the other moment about, what is it that you do? That tends to be the question people ask you all the time when you get out of college, right? Maybe in school, it's, what major are you? Well, that only tells you one aspect of who you are. So instead, think of it from the perspective of what do you like to do? Whether that's you telling people about yourself or you asking people about themselves. What do you like to do? So adding that one word changed the whole trajectory of the conversation. So instead of saying, well, I'm an IT major, or well, I go to work in an IT business, you can say, well, what do you like to do? I know that Rick likes to connect with people. I know that Rick wants to pursue philanthropy through his works. I know that Rick likes to do podcasts, right? So there are things about Rick that I know because I've gotten to know him a little bit better on what he likes to do. So in that identity map that you've done, pull it back out again, look at the adjectives and the nouns that you've given yourself, and then ask yourself, why does that matter? Why does being a tri-sig matter? Why does being a pica matter, right? Well, why does being on university program board matter? What does that do for you as a person? What do you like about that? Because that's how people in interview situations will really get to know you. And then you can also get to know other people too, right? It's like, well, what do you like to do? And hopefully in that exchange, you start picking up on commonalities that you can now enter into further conversation and go a little bit deeper in that conversation. So we wanted to give you a practical tip in all of this connecting and interpersonal skills that you can actually go out today and you can start talking to people about what it is that you like and what it is that they like. I just practice that over and over again. I want to wrap it up here, but we wanted to open up the floor and give you guys an opportunity to ask some questions of two very curious alumni to hear about how things are going for you. You know, what are the things that you're thinking about? What do you need help with? Don't forget to write down either your mentorship moment or what you want to be mentored on, because we want that at the end of class too. Yes, ma'am.
When do you think it's too late to figure out what you want to do?
Well, you started the question with too late, meaning in the end, and it's over, and then there's nothing beyond the rainbow, right? There's nothing there. And so what I would say is just retraining the brain and reframing to saying it's never too late. If we can, for me, after 40, really dig into passionate projects and doing things like presenting through podcasts, doing fundraising, it's really never too late. And so I would just give yourself, again, that time to say, you know what, this is what's in front of me. This is what I'm studying now. This is today my interest at 19, 20, 21 years old. This is what my interest is in, passionate is in. Following that and just seeing where over the course of the relationships, working, personal, that you develop, if your light goes in different directions. So don't put, again, we talked about false deadlines. Don't put those false deadlines on yourself that, it's too late by 30, too late to get married, too late to have kids. If I'm not locked into my career by 25, too late. Okay. So I would just ask kindly and gently, just too late, boop, take that out. Just kind of pull it out and just say, it's never too late.
I agree. He mentioned earlier giving yourself grace. I don't think it's too late for anything. I mean, if you have a curiosity and an interest, just continue to pursue it. Now, listen, every single one of us is going to get up every single day, right? And as we get up, we've got 24 hours in that day, 160 hours in that week. And you know what nature hates? A vacuum. So your time is always going to be filled. It's going to be filled with something. It's going to be filled with Netflix. It's going to be filled with YouTube. It's going to be filled with Twitter or X. It's going to be filled with class. It's going to be filled with parties. It's going to be filled with jobs. It's going to be filled with a lot of things. The thing that I would say is always make sure that you're filling your time with something that's helping you grow, helping you connect. And if you do that, you will continue to open up opportunities for yourself. And you'll learn a lot about yourself in those opportunities opening as to, is that something I should pursue? Maybe, maybe not. And sometimes try it. Right? If it's going to make you uncomfortable, but it's going to give you that opportunity to grow, sometimes try it, but it's never too late. That's a self-limiting belief. So I'm with Rick. I would kindly ask that we remove that self-limiting belief because it's never too late. I mean, you see people doing things all the time. You know, I met an 80-year-old that just got, a $750,000 grant and then a $3 million grant. As an 80-year-old, she is just rocking it. And she's emeritus, right? Her career, she's retired, but she's still doing all this stuff. I see people finishing when I was running. I see people finishing marathons that were 3 times, older. When I was 20, they were in their 60s, 70s, 80s finishing marathons. So it's never too late to do what it is that you want to go after. It's mindset. It's whether or not you're going to try. Right?
A nice cheesy kind of metaphor is, when you're behind the wheel of the car, right? You have a windshield you're looking forward and moving towards, and you have a rear view mirror and side mirrors that only focus on what's next to you and what's behind you, right? But you have to use all the mirrors. You have to look forward through the windshield. You have to look in the rear view, and you have to look in your side mirrors, right? Together, that's getting you to that next point and not hitting the person next to you or, being aware of everything around you, right? So it is just that balance, thinking of it as it's not just, I'm just looking forward. Of course you're looking forward, but also leveraging who's next to you, who's behind you as well, and just moving forward along the way in doing that. So, again, somebody who it took years and years to finally really find something that really, gets me excited and gets me out of bed. And we have that we have that benefit now with a really strong rear view to look behind and see, okay, what was behind us? How did we get to this point now? And lessons learned from that, right? Your rear view is a little bit smaller, not as as much life lived, but someone had once said, it's not the years of life, it's the life in the years, right? So making the most, you could have a very full life in 22 years, 21 years, 20 years, and there's only more ahead. So just kind of keep that optimistic, forward-thinking viewpoint, and it's going to serve you.
What other questions can we answer today? We want to hear from you.
Yeah, there's got to be one more.
Yes, sis.
What's the best piece of advice that you guys received during your college years?
Oh, wow. Best piece of advice during college years.
I'll tell a story.
Please.
Okay.
Yeah, it's going to take a second.
Yeah, give me a second to think. So I remember when I was here in college, it was the age of grunge. So if you know anything about grunge, everything's like 2 sizes too big and typically lacking of color, and it's just kind of sliding across the floor. So it did not necessarily look my best, but everybody was like that. So I was just kind of like everybody else. And I had to go from Fred Hall, which is where I lived in the Village, and I had to hike it all the way up to Anthony Seeker, which is, I think, a police station or something at this point. I can't remember. But anyways, that's where all my comm classes were. And every time I would do that hike and schlep in my grunge, I would see this one woman, and she always looked impeccable. And she had like kitten heels on. It's a mountain campus. Who's wearing kitten heels on a mountain campus? I mean, I kind of am today, but anyways, she had kitten heels on, and she always had something akin to a suit or like a nice dress. And so I thought maybe she's a new professor, or maybe she's interviewing. And if she's interviewing, what's she interviewing for? I want to know all about this. And so I mustered up the courage to go up to her one day, and I was like, excuse me, are you a new professor here? Are you getting ready for interviews? Am I missing something? And she looked at me and she said, no, I'm a student just like you. And she introduced herself, and I said, oh, I'm Tina Fox. She's like, what year are you? And I said, sophomore. And I said, what year are you? And she said, senior. And I said, you always look so great. Why do you always look so great? And she said, well, the way that I see it is that you never know when opportunity is going to rise to meet you. And I just want to be ready when it is. And this was before mic drop moments. And for me, the mic hit the floor that day, and I went, bam. So you can look her up after class. Her name is Patricia Southall. She went on to be Miss Virginia. She also married Martin Lawrence, and then she married Emmett Smith. And she's international speaker, and she is so put together. And so that is the awesome Patricia Southall. But I'll never forget it. It was a mentorship moment that changed my life. And after that, I basically gave away all my clothes to my friends, and I decided to go find clothes that were going to make me look better in public, because I didn't know when opportunity was going to rise to meet me, and I wanted to be ready for that challenge. So that was my mentorship moment.
I was going to say, being told when I was actually in the spring semester of my senior year, knowing I wasn't going to be graduating on time, I came in with 6 credits and I ended up 6 credits short. And I think part of that had to do with the major that I was in, and doing those repeat forgivenesses, it actually put me behind. So I was a December graduate. And so what did I do that last semester? I moved into the fraternity house. And so where's a place where you could live that you don't have a lease to be responsible for, and so you can move in and move out and all of that. So that's a silly piece of advice, but really, and that was what was great, was that I was just in it. Before I left, I really cemented a lot of relationships again with the person who had the interview, whose spot I took, also lived there, and just solidifying and being in close quarters with people. And it can be an apartment off campus. It can be a roommate of any kind. Doesn't have to be a fraternity house. Obviously that was just great. But to me, I had the benefit of it, a bigger brother who had lived this life before. He's 5 years older, and he was an example of the things to do. He says, get involved. And the things that he did by example, again, fraternity life, student ambassador, orientation assistant. He had told me to do this thing, be involved on campus. And so that, to me, I had received that bit of advice as I got here. As far as advice, actually I was just really just a fish kind of swimming in a big sea and just going with the flow, not really realizing it. Looking back now, I'm like, wow, I did give myself grace to have friends, drop off with some friends, as you get tighter with this group, then maybe that group falls off, but just giving myself that space to do those things. I kind of self-mentored in that way. I should have asked more professors for guidance along the work that I was doing. I could have approached alumni during alumni weekends, like when they come back. A lot of with these, if you play a sport or if you're involved in these clubs where people will come back for homecoming and approaching somebody, if I were to do it all over again, maybe grabbing that, fraternity brother who graduated eons ago and asking them about work and what got them there. That is kind of how I would impart to you guys, how you can kind of start doing that now and finding those points of view and those life experiences.
Yes, ma'am.
How do you time manage all of your jobs?
Ooh, time management is a big thing.
Oh yeah, we have spouses and kids. What about them? What do we do? Oh, geez.
I've often said that everybody, if we live a week, we get 160 hours in that week, right? And it's going to be filled because nature hates a vacuum. So that time is going to be filled with something. And it's what do you choose to fill that time with? And so going global is always the best way to start your time management, in my opinion. It's starting with the things that matter the most. What are the things that I'm aligned with, value, moral wise? How do I want to spend my time? So whether that's, I'm going to make sure that I'm really taking full advantage of my education and I'm going to get myself 18 hours so that I can maximize my time here at JMU, or I'm going to do these extracurriculars because it's going to give me project-based connections and relationships, family, whatever that is. So take the big picture and then drill it down, right? Be realistic with how many hours exist in a week. We have 160 hours that exist in a week. So you got to sleep in there, right? You might have a commute. You might have to eat. There's certain things that you're going to do. So don't overschedule yourself. I know a lot of people love to check boxes and say, I did all of these things. I told you, when I was at JMU, I was a student. I was involved in Greek life. And then I also do university program board. That was it. And I really honed in and focused on that. So time management is a function of what do you want to do? Why do you want to do those things? How is that going to benefit your growth? And then mapping it out. And I think planning is really important. I used to plan years in advance. I stopped doing that because that life just gets in the way. Now I plan more, a quarter to 6 months, maybe a year in advance so that I have goals and I'm reaching mileposts along those goals.
Yeah, what I find, the app that I use the most on my phone, it's not, the texting and the phone calling and the social media, it's the timer. So we used to do this with our kids. We put them in timeout, 2 minutes, boom. 2 minutes, when this buzzes, when this goes off, you're coming out. You're building a border of some kind. And like everything, creativity and opportunities live, but you got to have some guardrails. You're not at JMU without education, right? Or a major or something to keep you on a path of some kind, right? It's not just a free flow, pop in that building, pop in that building. You have some structure to it, right? So what I do daily is I'll set a timer for myself. Now, if I'm answering emails and I'm in the thing and on the phone, that's one thing. But if I need to break off and just say, oh, there's something that I don't want to forget, I'm going to set my timer, give me 10 minutes. And in that 10 minutes, what can I do? Yes, I can waste away on social media. I can just doom scroll. I can do all of that. Or I can just set a timer and just say, you know what? All I've got is 10 minutes now. I've got 10 minutes. Let me hold myself to it. Quick little workout, a quick little, created drop of some kind. And I use this just in my life. And it really came with parenting first. And then I realized, oh my gosh, I can use this timer to do a lot of things and just hold myself to I'm not shooting hours and overshooting, just small little wins, right? 10 minutes, great. I've got something down. That's 10 minutes that I wouldn't have had or given myself otherwise. So I found that to be really helpful.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm from out of state and I'm starting to think about internship opportunities. How do you guys recommend grow it by network professional where I don't have alumni in a state to help?
What state are you in?
Connecticut.
Okay. Well, welcome. We love our Northeasterners.
Yeah, for sure. But you have the relationships and friends from, is this back home?
Yeah.
Okay. So doing that. And do you keep in touch with some of the friends that you came up with and came through with? Yeah.
Do you want an internship in Connecticut or doesn't matter?
Well, that's what I was kind of thinking about rather than how to work here.
Yeah, sure. No, that's a good point, right? So a lot of people that I graduated with, Charlotte was really hot when I graduated as far as people to move to. A lot of DC because a lot of Virginia students, so that made sense. New York. You can find yourself really going anywhere, so you're not constrained in that way. There are alumni from all over the place, from Connecticut and other places. I think a great place to start is, the foundation of your education here and your experience. That's ultimately going to be what you know, and then it's who you know. Right. So then weaving back into, again, those friends, and just having an ear on the ground. Cause I know what you mean. I think also, with the internet and everything now, just finding opportunities just within that town, that city, in which you're at.
This is where Turn meant. This is why I built Turn. right? It's because, it's because I'm trying to help the students bridge that collegiate to career connection, whether that's in their local hometown or in their major, et cetera. But outside of that, I think the best thing you can do is tap into your alumni network. So that is familiar to you because you both came from James Madison University. If you go into LinkedIn and you use that search bar and you type in JMU, Connecticut, you might find alumni that are there. You can also go to alumni relations and say, who are your alumni in Connecticut? Paula Polglaze is your director of alumni relations. She'd be happy to help you with that. Ask them to, can I get some names because I want to reach out to them on LinkedIn, and then just start connecting and let them know who you are. Make sure it's a really tight little blurb. And when you ask for somebody to connect with you on LinkedIn, my best practice is say that you're looking for a 15-minute informational conversation. That's it. And then at 13 minutes, you're going to cut that conversation off. Right? Because you're going to respect their time and you're going to be prepared when you get into that conversation with a couple, 3 questions of what you need to know, maybe who they can further connect you with that's in an industry that you're interested in. That would be the greatest place to start. So I'm going to wrap because Rick did me the great favor of allowing us to bring Turn Live through the pod of DC here at JMU during homecoming week.